Good morning, this is Monty once again from DPL Surveillance Equipment. Doing my morning chores and reviewing what's going on in the financial markets. I think as I've indicated before, and I'll just reiterate it as much as possible just to give you guys some context in terms of what I'm doing with the podcast and the way I think. I typically get up early in the morning. I take care of some very redundant and monotonous things like chores or whatever, while I listen to the financial commentary about the financial markets in the United States, outside the United States, etc., corporate leaders and government officials, see what everyone's doing, what they're thinking, and whatever. And then I try to sift through it and come up with a podcast or whatever. Just to also help me get an idea of the big picture in terms of what framework I'm operating out of, just so I can make smart decisions. Now, I'm owner of DPL Surveillance Equipment. We're a full-service surveillance and security equipment company. We have lifetime guarantees and warranties on all the products. We have 24/7, 365 tech sales and customer support. We have perhaps the largest inventory of items that not only can you buy, but you can rent or lay away as well. Humongous video library. The product demonstration videos number into the hundreds probably, and we have miscellaneous articles, health-related articles about podcasts on the website. You can read about that. I'm sorry, we have articles about health-related articles. We have finance and economics, we have cybersecurity, we have anti-terrorist related articles and podcasts and blogs and videos. Okay, it's basically a multimedia center. That's all it is. It's a multimedia center designed to educate you on surveillance, counter surveillance, and all of the other things I just mentioned. And I'm adding new products to the website, and we have a number of items that are on sale. Actually, they are our rental products. The rental products are technically used once they go out on rental, even one time. So we mark them as used, and we discount them. And you guys can pick up some high quality, state of the art surveillance and counter surveillance type of products for a cheaper price because they've been rented out once or twice. So let me see. Now, the website has been completely revamped, redesigned, optimized for mobile, very efficient to use, very easy to navigate. And I think it looks great. Go on over there, check it out, and see what you think. All right? Now, this particular podcast emphasizes something that you guys know I'm an adamant believer in. I think the cryptocurrency space, particularly Bitcoin, is going to revolutionize and disrupt the current financial system. Okay, now I know that says a whole lot, and that's quite a mouthful, and it's a tall order. But I currently believe, for some reason, that the current financial system is crumbling right before us. And some of the signs, we need to pay attention to some of these signs. I always pointed them out, and I don't think we're going to see a complete a situation where you wake up one day and everything just, collapses all at once, or there's going to be some flashing lights or something. Sometimes the boiling pot of water that the frog is in, it heats up gradually, believe it or not. And at some point, the frog does boil. So if you're looking for a sudden and dramatic event, you're probably not going to see it. But if you're witnessing lack of purchasing power, every time you go to the gas station, every time you go to the grocery store, every time you decide to pay some bills or something, if it seems like the amount of money that you need is dramatic or dramatically increases, and you're left with less and less money on your paycheck, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a constant steady devaluation of your money in your pocket. That's what the politicians do in Washington. That's what the financial engineers on Wall Street, that's what they do. They slowly affect your spending, the value of your money, and over time, with all of the financial engineering and such that goes on in Washington and on Wall Street, that's the end result, that your money is actually worth less and less. And in the crypto space, we try to emphasize that, but we think there's value in Bitcoin. We think there's value in using the blockchain. We think there's value in terms of having an alternative financial system with a limited cap of 21 million on the Bitcoin, where we have accountability and transparency on the blockchain. We just need to get this time to get this system started and get adoption and get people's awareness up. So one of the things that I want to bring to your attention today is there's a situation right now going on with funding $1 trillion deficits. Now, believe it or not, as I listen to the financial commentary every day, more and more frequently they're talking about Treasury auctions. They're talking about how the United States has to more frequently issue debt into the financial markets. And basically that means that in order to pay the bills, so to speak, you have to go out there and issue debt to international and investors in the United States and outside the United States. Now, provided that these guys actually see value in the debt that the United States government is issuing, then you don't have a problem, usually. But in a situation where people are losing confidence, you could find yourself issuing a lot of debt to pay your bills and your current obligations. That's what the United States is doing, is just trying to pay its bills. But if the investors lose confidence, then that means you're issuing more and more debt, and you got to pay higher and higher interest payments to these investors just to entice them to buy your debt. Now, what's happening is we're issuing a lot more debt, mainly because investors don't believe that these tax cuts are going to cut it. In other words, these tax cuts are supposed to stimulate the economy and get things moving along, so we don't have to issue as much debt. Because when the budget deficits start approaching like $1 trillion, then more and more people lose confidence. They lose faith, and that's exactly what's happening right now. The Treasury is issuing all sorts of notes. It's doing 2 years and 5 years and 10 years and maybe 140 years or whatever. But all of these particular maturities, I don't know if they make that much of a difference, mainly because if people don't have confidence in a 2-year, and you think if I offer them a note or something that matures in 150 years, that's going to make a difference. I don't know whether or not people want to lock up their money with a government that's being irresponsible. It doesn't make any difference whether or not it's 2 years or 50 years or 200 years. You just don't have the confidence there, and that's what's happening. The United States government is issuing more and more debt, and people are like, no, thank you. I don't want it. I don't need it. And they're looking to China. They're looking to Japan. They're looking to Europe. They're looking to all these other countries, looking at their debt, looking at their bonds and notes, and they're going for that instead. So it looks like we have a little problem here in the United States, mainly because tax receipts also are declining. Tax receipts, just for those of you who don't know, tax receipts are what the government gets when we pay our taxes. When individuals pay their taxes and corporations pay their taxes, that's a tax receipt, and it comes into Washington's coffers, and they pay the bills. But there has been a 7% decline year over year in tax receipts going into Washington. And on the corporate level, there has been a 33% decline in tax receipts going into Washington. So it looks like corporate America is not doing their part in terms of helping fund the government deficits. They have, I guess they figure they have better things they can do with their money. And since they have the accountants and the lawyers and different people, CPAs, who can figure out how to help them avoid taxes, that's exactly what they're doing. They're deciding to keep their money and do other things with it, which is really bad news considering that as individuals, we can't fund these deficits, these budget deficits, all by ourselves. Excuse the noise. I'm kind of making a little noise as I clean my car. But see, we can't fund the shenanigans and the deficits and everything that's going on in Washington all by ourselves as individuals. There's just not enough money. We need corporate participation as well. But considering that there's been a 33% decline in the corporate tax receipts, I don't think we're going to get it from corporate America. And it looks like we're just going to have more. We're going to have $1 trillion deficits and more $1 trillion deficits going forward, which means that a lot of things that need to be funded, the infrastructure, which Donald Trump is not talking about, the border walls that Mexico was supposed to pay for, economic expansion overall. I mean, R&D on a government basic research level. A lot of times you want your government to pay for basic research, and when it comes to R&D, that typically gets you into outer space. That typically gets you into some of the areas where corporate America may not have the incentive to invest. But if the government can do basic research in these areas, then that's where you get these breakthroughs that may not yield a profit or any money right off the top on the short term, but over the long term, you get to find out about, how to deal with disease, how to deal with water shortages, how to deal with lack of education or something. In other words, basic research is typically done on the government level, and if you don't have any money, if you're broke as a government, then that's what happens. You start cutting back on all of these areas. Again, I don't care if it's health, I don't care if it's education, whatever it is. When it comes to that type of basic research, if you don't have the money, then you can't do it. You postpone everything. Everything gets delayed and put on the back burner. So that's what we're looking at. We're looking at a total lack of money, funding on a corporate level, and it looks like it's going to be very, very dicey. So I'm going to hold on to my Bitcoin and keep accumulating cryptocurrencies and trying to promote mass adoption in the crypto space, just so people would have an alternative. We've done very well with what we've done so far in the crypto space. And before I forget, Donald Trump has persuaded Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve to postpone some of the most recent rate hikes, which is pretty stupid because you're not supposed to be politically influencing the Federal Reserve. It's been one of the areas where you don't touch when it comes to what's political and what's not. You don't convince the Federal Reserve what to do or what not to do. If you're president of the United States, they're supposed to look at the market itself and determine over the short term and over the long term what's going to be done or not done as far as raising interest rates, printing money, or whatever. But anyway, Donald Trump should be careful because he's going to get his wish, and I think he already got it because Jerome Powell delayed the latest decision to increase interest rates, and if Jerome Powell sends a signal that we don't need to increase rates because the economy obviously is not moving forward at that quick of a pace, then that means that maybe the economy maybe it's sluggish, right? So that sends an entirely different message to the markets that we don't have a chance of overheating. We're not moving along that quickly, and we don't need to raise rates. That means maybe we're going slow. Maybe things aren't that good. Okay, so that sends an entirely different message. So Trump should really be careful in terms of the message that's being sent to the financial markets and investors overall. So that is one thing I want to bring to you guys' attention. And see anything else? See tax receipts, different types of notes and bonds being offered. Nobody's buying them up. I think that may be it for now. Just be aware, you guys, that the inflation levels right now are pretty high. Oh yeah, the cost of borrowing money, because interest rates overall have to go up. As I mentioned before, borrowing costs are going to go up. The amount of money that you pay on credit cards and mortgages and such is going to go up as well. So everybody is going to be, unfortunately, taking a hit because of the higher borrowing costs. When you have a credit card that adjusts upwards, when you have a mortgage that adjusts upwards, when you have any personal loans or whatever that adjusts upwards, in an environment where the rates are going up, then that means your borrowing costs, the costs, your own costs are going to go up as well. Okay, that means you're going to have less money, right, at the end of the day after paying higher interest rates on whatever debt that you have. So that's going to be a further drag on people, on the economy and such. So there's a few things you want to be aware of and get prepared for, because it looks like all these Treasury auctions being more and more frequent, that seems to indicate that the government already knows that they're not going to be pulling in much money in the way of tax receipts. And see, stupid Trump also, he knows that states like California, who are experiencing a lot of fires, we're going to need some emergency help. When states declare these national emergencies, that means the government has to come in with some money, some real money, tens of billions of dollars to pay off the cost of firefighting and floods and hurricanes that hit, whatever it is. That could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars easy. And if Trump is extolling or talking about, bragging about the idea that he saved us $50 billion, you need to consider, whenever you have a national emergency or a crisis or something, weather related or not, that could eat up all of the savings in one swoop, one fell swoop. 30, 40, 50 billion dollars is nothing when you take a look at the size of these national these emergencies. Hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, okay? It typically takes 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion dollars just to address those issues, okay? Mother Nature, when it does devastation and it's becoming more and more frequent, that means somebody's going to be spending a lot of money. And the federal government is usually the person who has to kick in. So, and I just want to say Donald Trump is not talking about people in California and those of us who are suffering with the fire-related events. He needs to go on record, go on to the news, just come out and say, look, we sympathize with you guys who have lost families. People are dying. You know, we want to do something and talk about what he wants to do, but he's ignoring that. So, you know, we're in a situation that's really, really sad in terms of why this president is not talking about people in California and some of the other states who are suffering from the fire-related situations. When people lose their lives, thousands, hundreds or thousands of people, because of these natural catastrophes that are going on right now, particularly the fires, the president really should come out and say something to address the issues and maybe declare some of these areas a national emergency. But he's going to put it off and put it off, and pretty soon the public's going to demand it, and then he's going to have to start writing some checks. And that money that $50 billion that he talked about saving, even though we have $22 trillion trade deficits, it's going to be gone. It's going to disappear. Okay. So anyway, we have some very long-term problems that need to be addressed, and we need to talk about structural change, not band-aids, not rhetoric, not press release, not sound bites. There's some structural changes that need to take place because things are changing. You know, natural disasters and such are increasing at a dramatic rate, and we just need to fix the system, completely overhaul it. Anyway, I'm going to close up this podcast, and thanks for tuning in. And as I always say at the conclusion of every podcast, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and stay safe, okay? You guys have a great day. Take care. Bye.